Can a single driver change the course of an entire historic team? What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton just did that with Ferrari? What he discovered at the Mexican Grand Prix left even Frédéric Vasseur speechless and could be the beginning of a technical revolution. Stay, because what you are going to hear, you did not expect. After the hectic United States Grand Prix, Ferrari arrived in Mexico with growing uncertainty. The SF-25 was not performing as expected. The team's internal simulations promised a solid configuration in fast corners, stability under braking, and moderately competitive downforce. But when the car touched the asphalt of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, everything planned fell apart. Lewis Hamilton, in his second season with Ferrari, was the first to notice. From the first lap of free practice, his instinct, developed after more than a decade at the highest level, told him that there was something strange. It was not an obvious or visible problem. It was not a mechanical failure or an obvious loss of power. It was something more subtle, more complex, something that only a pilot with his technical sensitivity could detect. The car felt unbalanced in high-speed areas. The front end of the SF-25 showed excessive rigidity, while the rear seemed to behave unpredictably when exiting corners. But beyond the sensations, it was the telemetry that Hamilton demanded to review that revealed a worrying anomaly. The track data did not match any previous simulation. In other words, Ferrari had built a car that, on paper, was supposed to behave one way, but on the track, it did exactly the opposite. The first big discovery came from the behavior of the front suspension. According to the simulations, the car had to maintain good downforce when braking and entering corners. However, the actual data showed that the front compression was generating instability, as if the geometry of the suspension system itself was poorly optimized. This directly affected the driver's confidence when attacking fast corners, something critical on a circuit like Mexico, where high-speed link sections punish any slight loss of balance. The most amazing thing was how Hamilton didn't just describe the problem. He went further. He pointed out exactly which areas of the circuit amplified the anomaly. For example, in the stadium section, where maximum precision is needed when changing direction, the car reacted late to steering wheel commands. But on the long straight, in conditions of hard braking and aerodynamic support, the rear broke down. It was as if the car was fighting against itself. The front axle wanted one thing, and the rear axle responded with another. What was truly shocking for Frédéric Vasseur was not only the level of technical detail with which Hamilton disassembled the SF-25, but the fact that none of the data that the team previously managed had anticipated it. The simulations were calibrated with parameters that simply did not align with reality. The structural base of the car, designed for rigidity and stability, turned out to be counterproductive in real conditions. And no engineer detected this. A pilot discovered it. This moment marked a before and after. Vasseur understood it instantly. If a 7-time world champion, in just a few hours of practice, is able to detect structural flaws that an entire technical team had not seen in months, something is deeply wrong in the internal development processes. And because of that, he was forced to order a total overhaul of the car's architecture. From suspension maps to chassis design, and its interaction with aerodynamic flow at certain speeds, what happened in Mexico was not a simple discovery. It was a turning point. Ferrari realized that it had been misinterpreting the data since the start of the season. That his way of understanding the car's aerodynamic balance was biased by erroneous internal logic. And they urgently needed to adapt their entire development approach to what the pilot was telling them from the cockpit. That Friday in Mexico City, Hamilton not only drove a Formula One car, he became Ferrari's true chief engineer, even if he was not officially in that position. And Vasseur, faced with this revelation, was shocked not only by the problem, but by the man who had exposed it. A man who could be the secret weapon that Ferrari so needed. What began as a simple practice in Mexico ended up triggering a true silent revolution within Ferrari. When Frédéric Vasseur finished digesting the technical analysis that Lewis Hamilton had produced practically by hand from the cockpit, he understood that it was not just a one-off correction. It was the beginning of a cultural change within the team. Hamilton's discovery was, without a doubt, a step forward. But as is often the case in Formula One, every solution comes with a new set of problems. Nothing in this sport is one-dimensional. And what Ferrari experienced after the Mexican GP practice was a shakeup that was as positive as it was dangerous. Because when a driver shows structural flaws in the development of a car, he is also questioning, although he does not do so explicitly, the validity of the work of dozens of professionals. Within Ferrari, this questioning did not go unnoticed. Suspension technicians, vehicle dynamics specialists, chassis designers, and aerodynamicists were forced to review its fundamentals. Many took the criticism maturely and collaborated with enthusiasm, but others felt that technical leadership was shifting from the center of Maranello to the number one seat in the red car, and that in a structure as traditional and hierarchical as Ferrari generates tension. Hamilton's entry into that more active, more interventionist role even changed the internal balances. He was no longer just the pilot who provided experience. He had become an authoritative voice within the hard core of decisions. And although Frédéric Vasseur publicly endorsed it, it is clear that this type of dynamic cannot be maintained without generating friction. Because when a driver begins to set the technical tone, someone else in the chain feels like they are losing control. Beyond egos, the real problem lies in internal confidence. When Hamilton stated that the simulations did not match the reality of the track, what he was saying was that Ferrari had been making important decisions based on incomplete, or worse yet, erroneous data. That revelation quietly undermined faith in validation systems. What else could they be miscalculating? How many strategic decisions during races had been influenced by simulation models that were no longer reliable? And that brings us to another critical point: time. Ferrari had to react immediately. There was no scope to redesign the car from scratch. What Hamilton put on the table required changing fundamental pieces, such as suspension mapping or aerodynamic loading conditions, in the middle of a tour of 3 consecutive weekends. That meant improvising. And in Formula One, improvising is usually expensive. Every accelerated change brings with it uncalculated risks. A new setup can correct one weakness and expose another. A new suspension map can improve traction in slow corners, but impair balance on long straights with deep braking. Ferrari, by following Hamilton's instructions, was betting on a solution that had not been fully validated in the wind tunnel, nor in complete simulation cycles. It was a leap of faith. At the same time, this episode highlighted something that Formula One usually ignores until it is too late: the absolute dependence on drivers with technical vision. What Hamilton did in Mexico cannot be replicated by any driver. It cannot be expected that each member of the grid has that sensitivity, that real-time diagnostic capacity, that technical nose honed by years of experience at the highest level. Ferrari now depends, more than ever, on Hamilton's ability to detect and solve problems. The Mexican Grand Prix practice could go down in history as one of those invisible moments that redefined the direction of a team. It was not a race won, nor a podium celebrated under fireworks. It was something more subtle but perhaps much more powerful. A moment of technical truth that laid bare Ferrari's weaknesses and, at the same time, revealed the magnitude of a quiet talent that Lewis Hamilton continues to carry within his helmet. And what happened that weekend is not measured in lap times, nor in final positions. It is measured in a team's ability to listen to itself, recognize its mistakes, and allow an external figure, a recently arrived driver with a different culture, to show them that the problem was not the car, but how they were understanding it. In a category so dominated by the rigidity of engineering, by the dependence on models and simulations, the simple fact of trusting again in the sensations of a pilot marks a 180-degree turn. What Hamilton discovered not only corrected a specific defect in the SF-25, arguably, it rewrote how Ferrari will approach its development going forward. But the question is inevitable. Will this be enough? Because it is one thing to have the diagnosis, and quite another to have the time, the cohesion, and the ability to transform that learning into victories. Ferrari has undergone many rebuilds in recent years, many promises of resurrection, and many times the initial momentum faded before reaching the goal. This case, however, is different, because change is not born from an executive meeting, nor from a new simulation tool. Born from the track, from the pilot's seat, from the very heart of the machine. And when change starts there, it's harder to stop, because it's not just about correcting the car. It's about redefining the team's philosophy, to trust human judgment again, in the accumulated experience, in fine-tuned intuition. If Ferrari decides to follow this path, if it manages to maintain that openness and technical humility that it showed in Mexico, then yes, the destiny of its 2025 season could be being rewritten in real time. Maybe it won't be visible in the next race. It may not come in the form of immediate victory, but the foundation will be laid. And with them, the possibility of becoming champions again will not be a romantic illusion, but a realistic goal. Leave me your opinion in the comments. I want to read you.